Hi, welcome back guys. This is your friend, Parallel Deku, back with another fanfiction. This is the second part of What If Deku Was Guardian to Eri. Now before starting, please give this video a like, and subscribe to the channel if you want more videos like this. Now let's get into the fanfic. It was 2 days after Eri made her self-declaration to get her parents to confess their love for each other when she woke up from her slumber. She glanced over at the digital clock on Midoriya's nightstand and saw that it was 6:00 a.m. All right, she thought, better go see if Auntie's awake. She got out of bed and opened the door, cringing a bit when a squeak came from the hinges. Fortunately for her, Midoriya only snorted in his sleep. Careful not to make any further noise, she closed the door. Eri proceeded up 2 flights of stairs and past IzuOcha's room until she reached her destination. Meanwhile, inside her room, Mina was lying on top of KiriMina, ending him passionately. Both were in their underwear. It was a weekly tradition for them ever since their Christmas. They just couldn't seem to keep their hands off each other. It had gotten to the point where Ida had told them to have their moments in private, so it became natural for them to have their make-out sessions in either of their rooms. But they shared one rule: no until after they graduated. They were still in high school and they didn't want any complications. "Hey Mina, can I ask you something?" KiriMina asked between ease. "If you had the ability to go back in time, would you change anything about our relationship?" Mina only smiled, sitting up on his lap and placing 2 fingers on his. "Nothing at all, Izuocha," she said, moving her fingers upward with each syllable. KiriMina smiled before pressing his lips against hers once more. At that moment, a knock came from outside the door. "Who could be up at this hour on a Saturday?" KiriMina asked in a quiet voice. "I'll check," Mina said. She walked over to the closed door and asked, "Who is it?" "Auntie Mina," Eri's voice called out from the other side. "It's me, Eri. Can I talk to you for a second?" Upon hearing the little girl's voice, both Mina and KiriMina looked at each other, terrified. Mina said in a nervous tone. She scanned the room frantically. Her eyes soon fell on the space between her bed and the floor. "Sure thing. Be with you in a minute." "What are you doing?" KiriMina asked in a horrified whisper. "Hide under the bed," Mina whispered back. "She won't see you, I promise." KiriMina only nodded and slid under the bed with some difficulty. Mina knelt down and said, "Stay still and don't make a sound." She gave him a quick peck on the lips and proceeded to put on short pajama bottoms and a tight t-shirt that hugged her figure. She opened the door to greet the little girl. "Hey, sweetie, how are you?" "Fine," Eri said. She tilted her head to the side to look behind Mina. "Auntie, who are you talking to?" "Nobody, pumpkin," Mina said, moving her leg in order to block Eri's view. "So, what did you want to talk to me about?" Eri turned her attention back to Mina. "Well, the thing is, I need your help with something. The truth is, I need your help to get Mama and Papa to love each other." There was a sudden silence in the area. "Auntie," Mina swooped the little girl up, embraced her, and gave the biggest smile Eri had ever seen. "Oh my God, Eri," she squealed, pressing and rubbing her cheek against Eri's. "You have no idea how long I've been waiting for someone else to recognize that your Mama and Papa are perfect for each other." She brought Eri inside her room and closed the door behind her. "I've been analyzing their reactions toward each other ever since the final exams last June, months before we met you," she said, putting Eri back down and walking over to the bedroom window. She pulled back the curtains to reveal a huge rectangular wooden board blocking out the view from outside. As Eri looked on, she noticed the board had notes, some pictures of her Mama and Papa, and lots of red string connected to said items. Eri's eyes soon followed the numerous threads until they reached the center of the board to a pen and a paper that read "Possibility of relationship 100%. "So, what do you think?" Mina asked with a huge smile on her face. "I think you have too much free time, Auntie," Eri said. "So what does this have to do with Mama and Papa?" she asked. Mina lifted an eyebrow, but her smile didn't waver. "Well, the truth is that I've been trying to get your parents together for the last few months. I've locked them inside a room together and I even put them under the mistletoe during Christmas, but it didn't work. But then I realized something: the problem wasn't my methods, it was that I was working alone. With your help, I think we might be able to do it." "So, what do we do?" Eri asked. "Well, the first thing we have to do is to get them to ask the other out on a date. If you can convince Midoriya to ask IzuOcha, then I can take care of IzuOcha. I have a few things and ideas afterward for them. But we need to do this first task before anything else. And then Mama and Papa will love each other," Eri asked, her eyes filled with hope. "If all goes smoothly, yes," Mina said. Eri smiled and cried out, "Yeah," and before Mina could stop her, she leapt onto the bed and jumped up and down. KiriMina let out a muffled gasp when Eri's feet connected with his back. "Eri," Mina said, terrified. She quickly lifted Eri off the bed and set her on the floor. "Why don't you go try and get some more sleep? I'll talk to you about the details later." "Okay," Eri said and made her way to the bedroom door. Before she left, she turned and asked, "Oh, Auntie, when Uncle Shima comes out from under the bed, tell him I said hi." "Will do, sweetie," Mina said, watching the little girl leave. She knelt down by the bed and looked at her boyfriend. "How are you holding up, babe?" KiriMina only responded with a simple "oh." He extended his left hand and let Mina pull him out. He stretched his back to ease the pain. So, he said once he was comfortable, you two are gonna try and get Midoriya and IzuOcha together, huh? Yep, Mina said with a huge smile, and I can't wait. It was nice of Eri to want to say hi to you. They looked at each other, eyes wide open, and exclaimed, how the heck did she know? A few days after her talk with Mina, Eri was standing by the stairs on the first floor watching Midoriya speak with Uncle. According to Mina, all she had to do was find a way to convince him to ask IzuOcha out. Alright, Eri thought to herself, just remember what Auntie taught you. She walked over to them. Hey, Papa, hey, Uncle Ida. Ida said in a somewhat stern voice. What have I told you about using that word? I know, Iri said. Hey is for horses. Midoriya couldn't help but chuckle a bit at Ida's dislike for that word. He turned to the little girl and asked, so, what's up, Iri? Iri turned to him and smiled before saying, well, the thing is, Papa, I wanted to tell you something about you and Mama. Midoriya's cheeks turned a bright pink. What did you want to talk about? Iri smiled. Everything was going just as planned so far. Well, she began, I noticed that you and Mama look tired lately. I was just wondering that you two should spend some time together without me. And IzuOcha. T-Toadler, Midoriya mused. His blush deepened. Well, you see I would. But 3 of Gigi got homework to do for Mr. Aizawa and then I have to meet up with All Might for training. I also have to meet up with my Mo. He noticed Iri's head facing the floor. Iri tilted her head back up to reveal her watery eyes and a sad look on her face. Why don't you want to spend time with Mama? She asked, her voice on the verge of breaking. Don't you like her? No. It's not like that, Midoriya said. It's just that I've got so much stuff to do and, well. He paused when he saw Iri's eyes brimming with tears. Oh no, don't cry, Iri. Look, will talk with IzuOcha about spending the day with her, okay? Iri rubbed her eyes with her left arm and sniffled. Okay, good, Midoriya said, relieved that Iri had stopped crying. Now why don't you go get ready for school? As Iri made her way upstairs to get her school supplies, a small smile crept on her face. She had completed her part of Phase 1. She just hoped Mina had done hers with IzuOcha. Hey, Ochako, Mina called out. They were making their way to class after training with All Might. Hey, Mina, IzuOcha said, smiling at her friend. What's up? Oh, nothing much, Mina said. I just wanted to talk about you and Midoriya. IzuOcha's cheeks turned a slight pink. She asked. What did you want to talk about? Well, I've just been noticing that you two haven't really been spending time together. Before Iri came into our lives, you two would hang out in the living room watching TV, spend time at the mall, and even team up together during game nights. IzuOcha's cheeks maintained their pinkish hue. Well, we've been busy lately, what with schoolwork and training. If you add caring for Iri on top of that, the two of us really haven't had any time to relax. Well, Mina said, her smile growing slightly. What if I were to look after Iri for a day? Maybe you and Midoriya could do something together then. IzuOcha paused while considering Mina's offer. It would be nice to have a day to ourselves, she said. Just as friends, of course. She turned to Mina and said, okay, I'll ask Deku if he wants to get together for a friendly outing. I believe next Saturday will work for me. I'll ask him after class today. Sweet, Mina said with a wide smile on her face. As IzuOcha walked away, the smile on her face shifted into a smirk. Well, that was easier than I could have imagined, she thought with delight. Let's just hope Iri had some luck with convincing Midoriya. Okay, you can do this, Izuku. You can do this, the green-haired student thought to himself. It was late in the afternoon at Alliance Heights and Midoriya was waiting in the hallway, hoping to talk to IzuOcha before dinner. It's not like I'm asking her out on a date. We're just gonna hang around. Maybe find a place to eat, go to the park, and wait. That's exactly like a date. I can't go through with this. What if she thinks I'm a weirdo and won't even talk to me again? How do I explain it to Iri? If that happens, will she not see IzuOcha as a mother figure just because she doesn't like me? In that way, will I have to? Deku. Midoriya screamed. He turned to see IzuOcha standing a few feet in front of him with a look of concern on her face. IzuOcha, hi. He tried to compose himself. Hi, Deku, IzuOcha said before asking, are you okay? Your face is really red. I'm fine, Midoriya said. Listen, IzuOcha, there's something I wanted to ask you. Oh, IzuOcha said. What is it? Well, the thing is ... Midoriya trailed off, unable to get the words out. What I wanted to ask. Wash bowed and shouted OYOUWANNAHANGOUTSOMETIME. What IzuOcha asked. What I was asking was, Midoriya continued, still in bowing position, would you like to hang out with me sometime, just the two of us? It was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Midoriya came back up to see a red-faced IzuOcha shaking and stuttering in front of him. I'm so sorry, Midoriya said. It's okay if you don't want to. Just thought what with Iri and everything. As sure, IzuOcha finally said after freezing for what seemed like forever. TT, that sounds nice. Oh, really? Midoriya asked in surprise. When URARAKA nodded in response, his mouth formed into a nervous smile. That's great. So, when do you wa? Next Saturday. What? Sorry, URARAKA said. I'm available next Saturday. Is that fine with you? Midoriya said, still unable to believe that the arrangements were going over smoothly. Why yeah, that's perfect. It's a date. A date? URARAKA exclaimed in surprise. No, 3 didn't mean it like that, Midoriya said, gesturing wildly in embarrassment. Around the corner at the far end of the hallway, a certain pink-skinned girl and a one-horned angel who had heard everything were looking at each other and grinning from ear to ear. So, you and URARAKA are going out? Kaminari asked with a smirk on his face as he, Midoriya, and the rest of the male student body of Class 1A sat around the living room. It was Wednesday, 3 days before Midoriya and URARAKA's outing, and the news that they were going out had spread throughout the dormitory like wildfire. Why yeah, Midoriya said nervously. But it's just an outing between friends, that's all. His response was met by a few chuckles from some of the male students. Bakugou only grumbled and said, about damn time, if you ask me. Wow, man, Kirishima said, looking at his best friend. I didn't know you cared about them that much. Are you kidding me? Like I give a shit if they get together. I'm just sick of them getting all nervous in front of each other. Ignoring Bakugou's language, Ada said before turning his attention back to his friend, when are you two socializing? Oh, this Saturday, Midoriya said. It's the only day she and I have off and we figured it would be nice to. He noticed Mashiro, Kirishima, and Kaminari smiling slyly at him. What? He asked in confusion. You do know this Saturday is the 14th of February, right? Kirishima asked with a hint of mischief in his voice. Why yeah, Midoriya answered. Kirishima placed a hand on Midoriya's shoulder. Midoriya, 14th of February is Valentine's Day. Midoriya continued to look on in confusion until Kirishima's words finally sunk in. His whole face turned a pinkish hue and he began to shake like mad. He exclaimed. Are you serious? The others nodded their heads. Oh my god, what am I going to do? He said, pacing around the room with worry. Should I cancel and rearrange for another date? Should I expect chocolates from her? Will it be so awkward that we can't even talk to each other like we do now? Do I? Ida placed a hand on his shoulder. Listen, Midoriya, he said, you shouldn't worry about any of those things. Like you said, it's just an outing between friends. Midoriya calmed down and took a deep breath. You're right, he said with a smile. It's just a friendly get-together, nothing more. Stupid, 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 URARAKA repeated to herself while continuing to smack her head against her planner. How could I forget about Valentine's Day? What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Well, for starters, you can calm down, Gyro said, rolling her eyes. It's just a simple get-together. It's not like you're going out on a date with him. But what if he's expecting something else? URARAKA asked. What if he expects me to give him chocolates since it'll be Valentine's Day? What if we'll be uncomfortable around other couples? What if we? Momo placed a hand on her shoulder. Listen, Ochako, she said, you shouldn't worry about any of those things. Like Kaiuka said, it's just an outing between friends. URARAKA sighed and said, you're right. I shouldn't worry about this too much. Sweet, Mina chimed in. Now let's figure out what you're gonna wear. She began to pull out various clothes for URARAKA to try on. Well, someone's enthusiastic about this whole thing, Gyro muttered. After 3 long and grueling days, Valentine's Day finally came. The forecast was sunny with a high of 60 degrees and a humidity of 40%, unusual for that time of year. The news anchor said it was to be the nicest day to celebrate Valentine's Day. Meanwhile at Alliance Heights, Midoriya was pacing back and forth in the living room waiting for URARAKA to join him. He was wearing dark brown pants, a light green shirt with the sleeves rolled up, and a sleeveless dark blue vest. Of course, he had to wear his signature red shoes as well. Midoriya calmed down. Will you? Kirishima said after watching Midoriya pace back and forth for the 20th time. Sorry, Midoriya said, rubbing the back of his head. I'm just nervous. Truth be told, I've never hung out with a girl on my own before. It's true, Bakugou said. Before UA, girls at their old school would look at Deku like he had 3 heads if he even so much as tried to talk to them. Trust us, Midoriya, Ida said, placing a hand on his shoulder. Everything is going to be fine. Midoriya only responded with a smile. Deku, the sound of a familiar voice caused Midoriya to turn his attention towards the stairs. His cheeks turned pink when he saw URARAKA standing at the top of the stairs with the other girls behind her and Eri by her side. She was wearing denim shorts, a white t-shirt, and a beige button-down coat with the sleeves rolled up to her elbows. She was also wearing green track shoes. She walked up to Midoriya and blushed a little. You look nice, she said. Why, you as well, Midoriya said as the redness from his cheeks covered his entire face. For a few minutes, they stood in total silence wondering what to do or say while the rest of their classmates either smirked or giggled. Are you two morons going to leave or not? Bakugou yelled in frustration, causing both of them to jump nervously. All right, sorry, Midoriya said. He turned to the others. Okay, we're going to be gone for a while. We're counting on you to look after Eri. all of her nutritional information and what she doesn't like are on the fridge. She's not allowed any sweets until after dinner, and that's only if she behaves herself. Well, that's all the time, isn't it? KiriMina asked, pressing Yuri's cheeks together and smiling at her while Yuri giggled and nodded vigorously. Besides, she continued, she'll be fine. Don't worry about it. You two just have fun today. Well, all right, IzuOcha said and retrieved her purse. We'll see you all when we get back. Be good, sweetie. She and Midoriya leaned forward and gave Yuri a quick peck on both cheeks, causing the little girl to giggle again. Bye, Mama and Papa, she said. Midoriya and IzuOcha smiled and walked out of the building. As soon as the doors closed, Mina and Yuri ran upstairs to get ready for their mission. Meanwhile, Bakugou's phone vibrated in his left pocket. He picked it up and, seeing a new message, texted back. On my way. Should be there at 11:10 at the latest. Pocketing the phone away, he said, I gotta get going. Something important. Kirishima raised an eyebrow. What is it? None of your damn business. That's what it is, Bakugou snapped before slamming the main entrance doors behind him. In some part of the city, Midoriya and IzuOcha were walking down the streets while trying to act calm and casual. It was difficult, however, since they had to pass couples who were either holding hands, hugging, or ing. Seeing such sights caused the two students to blush and glance away from each other. SSO, Midoriya said, trying to break the silence. And nice weather we're having? Huh. Why yeah, it is, IzuOcha said. Midoriya made a mental note to kick himself for talking about the weather. Two black hooded figures wearing sunglasses followed them at a distance, trying to look inconspicuous. The smaller one was wearing a cute hat, which drew the attention of the passers-by. Why aren't they doing anything? Yuri asked, a sense of worry in her voice. Patience, Yuri, Mina said. Everything comes to those who wait. Besides, I've got a few things that may help ease the tension between them. Midoriya scratched the back of his head before he turned to IzuOcha. So, where are we going again? Oh, IzuOcha said, Midoriya's voice snapping her out of her thoughts. There's this street market that Mina told me about. It's supposed to have some weird and interesting stuff. She went with Kirishima a couple of times in the past. After 30 minutes of walking, they arrived at the market. The whole street was filled with pedestrians. Pop-up tents with blankets and tables displayed the various items on sale. As Midoriya and IzuOcha looked around, they saw a diverse variety of items, ranging from international antiques to vintage goods, handicrafts, accessories, and organic food, as well as flowers and plants. Midoriya and IzuOcha moved through the vendors, checking out individual items like hats, action figures, vintage CDs, and clothes, all the while unaware that Mina and Yuri were tailing them every two booths. Midoriya and IzuOcha came across a booth that had various articles of jewelry, handicrafts, and accessories. The old woman running the booth smiled at them while they looked at the various items. IzuOcha's eyes soon fell on something pink and pretty. It was a pink rose with a clip on the back. Midoriya noticed it as well and picked it up, amazed at how light it felt in his hand. Hey IzuOcha, he said, isn't it nice? A hair clip, it's cute, IzuOcha exclaimed before looking at Midoriya. Can you put it in my hair? Sure. His hands were trembling. He had no idea what to do. Where do you want me to put it? She pulled a strand of hair behind her left ear and pointed at it. Around here should be fine, Deku. He gulped and took a deep breath. He caught a whiff of her shampoo and almost let the hair clip drop. He was pretty sure she could feel the heat radiating from his face. He gently put his left hand on her hair to keep it in place and, after what seemed like an eternity, managed to clip it on. Here you go, IzuOcha. Thanks, Deku. She caught Izuku's look and realized how close they were to each other. For a minute they stood frozen in place, their faces turning bright pink while looking at each other. The silence between them was finally broken when Midoriya leapt back. While he said, sorry 3SH should have asked first. And IzuOcha said, her face still red. It's okay, thank you. Hediha. The two students turned to see the old woman chuckling at their antics. She looked at them and said, if you like it so much, I can give you the couple's discount on that hair clip. Only 600 yen. Couples discount, Midoriya and IzuOcha both said before glancing at each other. No. It's not like that, we're just friends, that's all. Oh, the woman asked. She smiled again and turned to IzuOcha before saying, well, how about I give you the discount anyway, since that hair clip really does suit you, dearie. Oh, IzuOcha said. Thank you. She handed the 2 coins to the woman and she and Midoriya walked off, their faces still flushed in embarrassment. 2 booths behind them, Mina and Yuri were giggling at IzuOcha and Midoriya's reactions. We're just friends. Yeah, sure, Mina whispered while Yuri continued to giggle. Right, then, Mina said once she composed herself. If all goes according to plan, they'll be eating by lunchtime. Right, Yuri said in agreement. The rest of the shopping excursion was uneventful, though Midoriya and IzuOcha had avoided each other's gaze for a while out of embarrassment. By the time they had reached the last booth, Midoriya had gotten a vinyl record of Elvis Presley, an old Farchi comic, and a copy of To Kill a Jaybird. Aside from the hair clip, URaraka had also acquired a pair of durable work gloves for her father, an antique vase that her mother could use, and an cup game for Eri. It was around noon that their stomachs began to growl with hunger. I guess it's that time of the day. Midoriya said sheepishly. You wouldn't happen to know any good restaurants around, would you? Actually, I do, URaraka said. Mina suggested this restaurant close by that's supposed to have some really good food. Wanna give it a try? Midoriya smiled. Sure, that sounds great. After a few minutes of following directions on Midoriya's phone, they arrived at a sit-in restaurant. Once they walked inside, they saw that it looked completely normal if you didn't count the heart decorations dangling from the ceiling. Midoriya and URaraka proceeded to take a booth and looked through the menu. A waitress walked over to them. Hello, my name is Mika and I'll be your server. So, what will you two be having? Midoriya took a quick glance back at the menu. I'll have the pork korok and for a drink, just green tea, please. And I'll have the chicken katsu and green tea as well, URaraka said before she and Midoriya handed Mika their menus. Alright then, I'll be back with your drinks, Mika said, walking off to leave the two students to themselves. Mina and Eri had taken a table on the opposite side of the restaurant in order to keep enough distance from the two. Eri whispered, So, do you think this plan will work, Auntie? Trust me on this one, Eri, Mina said with a smirk. There's a good reason I suggested this restaurant to URaraka. Midoriya and URaraka were nervously twiddling their thumbs while avoiding each other's gazes. The tension was broken, however, when Mika came back with 2 cups and a kettle of green tea. They each poured themselves some and quietly sipped the warm beverage. SSO, Midoriya said when URaraka set her cup down. How's your tea? It's nice, actually. How's yours? Same. I mean, we both ordered the same drink. Oh, right, URaraka said sheepishly. Sorry. They resumed their silence for a few minutes until Midoriya said, So, I found out that there's going to be an all-new All Might figurine coming out next month. I just got on the waitlist for it yesterday. Well, that sounds exciting, URaraka said. Midoriya could sense her lack of interest in the subject. I'm sorry, URaraka, he said. It's just that I don't know what to talk about in this situation. I mean, I've never gone out with a girl before. It's all right, Deku, URaraka said. To be honest, I've never done this either. Really, why wouldn't someone want to go out with a girl as sweet and beautiful as you? The question he had asked soon dawned on him and his face turned betrayed. Oh god, I'm so sorry too, just thought maybe you've been on a couple outings. Not that I'm saying you've dated a lot of guys, it's just that. Oh god, what was I thinking? He buried his face into his hands. Midoriya moved his hands from his face when he heard URaraka laugh. After a while, she ceased and placed her hand on his. Deku, she said with a smile, it's okay. I know you didn't mean to imply that, but it was really sweet of you to say those things. Oh, Midoriya said. Well, you're welcome. Here are your meals. The announcement caused both Midoriya and URaraka to turn and see Mika holding a plate in each hand. Enjoy, she said, setting them down carefully. Midoriya could smell the meaty aroma of his deep-fried pork. It came with a side of shredded cabbage. Meanwhile, URaraka's mouth watered at the sight of her chicken katsu, which also came with shredded cabbage and sliced tomato wedges. Using her chopsticks, URaraka picked up a piece of the chicken and ate it. Her eyes widened when the juicy meat and the spices hit her taste buds. Wow, this is really good. She picked up another piece. Hey, Deku, you wanna try it? Midoriya asked. It took him a few seconds to remember what she had asked. Sure, URaraka. He leaned forward across the table and took a bite from URaraka's outstretched chopsticks. Wow, he said after swallowing, that is really good. He picked up a piece of his own meal. Do you want one as well, URaraka? Sure, she exclaimed. URaraka opened her mouth and bit down on the slice of pork that was between Midoriya's chopsticks. She chewed on it slowly with closed eyes. Wow, that's delicious. She opened her eyes again and turned her attention to Midoriya, who was staring at her with an odd expression on his face. Deku, URaraka asked. Is something wrong? Midoriya said. Oh, sorry, URaraka. Nothing's wrong. I'm fine. The rest of the meal went well. Midoriya and URaraka each enjoyed their meals and talked casually like two good friends. URaraka was even kind enough to share a few of her tomato wedges. Meanwhile, Mina and Eri were both keeping a watchful eye on the two students. Mina turned to the little girl and whispered, See, the strategy is to get them to calm down and make them feel comfortable around each other. And when the time is right, she continued with a smile while Eri drank apple juice from her cup, we reel in the prize. After a good 25 minutes, Midoriya and URaraka rested against the back of their seats with their plates empty and their bellies full. That was delicious, URaraka said while patting her stomach. I don't think I can eat another bite. Same here, Midoriya said. So, did you two enjoy your meals? The two friends turned to see Mika standing before them with a smile on her face. Yes, we did, the two said in unison. Excellent. Now, before you two pay and leave, I would like to know if you would be interested in participating in our annual biscuit challenge. Biscuit challenge? Midoriya asked. It's a contest this restaurant hosts every year on Valentine's Day for couples. Mika showed them a cup filled with chocolate-covered biscuit sticks. The challenge is to gently put one end of the biscuit in your mouth while your partner does the same with the other end. Then, you keep biting into the stick until either of you stop or the biscuit breaks off. The shorter the distance, the greater the prize. Midoriya and IzuOcha looked at each other before glancing back at Mika. And what has to happen in order to get the top prize? IzuOcha asked. Mika smiled and said, well, in order to win the top prize, there would have to be no trace of the biscuit between you two. In other words, you would have to be ing. Midoriya's face reddened when Mika finished explaining the rules. IzuOcha, KKK, he thought in panic. If they add, what would happen to them in the future? Would they still be considered friends? Oh, I'm so sorry, Mika said abruptly. You don't have to do this if you don't want to. Maybe this was a bit too much to ask. We'll do it, IzuOcha exclaimed, causing many of the other patrons to turn their heads in confusion. IzuOcha, Midoriya asked. WWE don't really have to fully, Deku, she said. WWE'll just stop with whatever we feel comfortable with. And besides, it would be cool to win something. Midoriya thought about it. It would be nice to do something out of his comfort zone. And even if they didn't, they would win something nice. Oh, okay, let's do it, he said with confidence. Excellent, Mika exclaimed with delight. She pulled out a biscuit stick from the cup and handed it to IzuOcha. IzuOcha lightly placed one end of the stick in her mouth while Izuku placed the other end in his. Both students gulped nervously at how close they were to each other. Eri and Mina were glancing over to try and catch a glimpse of the two students. Now, Eri, Mina said with a smirk, the real fun begins. I guess I'll go first, Midoriya said. As sure, IzuOcha replied. Midoriya began by taking a few small bites before pausing. IzuOcha took it as her cue to start biting, inching closer and closer until there was about 4 inches left. Gulping, the two rose up in their seats, careful not to break the stick as they did. They soon began simultaneously chewing on the stick, their faces growing redder and redder by each inch. Unbeknownst to them, their hands started to get closer as well. After a few agonizing minutes, Midoriya and IzuOcha found themselves with half an inch of the stick between them. They were so close to each other that the tips of their noses were touching. As they continued to stare at each other, their faces became a dark shade of red. They immediately froze, each of them afraid to make the first move. Around them, the other patrons and even the staff paused at what they were doing and looked on in curiosity. Even Mina and Eri were covering their mouths to silence their squeals of delight. So, Mika said, "Did you two give up?" IzuOcha blinked in surprise at Mika's words. It was then that her mind was set. She was not going to back down from this challenge. There was no way she would give up. She slowly opened her mouth, ready to take the final bite while many of the patrons, including Mina and Eri, hitched their breaths in anticipation. Yo, Midoriya, IzuOcha, what's up? Kaminari's voice called out from behind them. Both students jumped apart from each other while the last bit of the stick landed on the table. Some patrons sighed in disappointment. Mina and Eri, however, looked devastated. The former made a mental note to make the electricity user pay for interfering with her plans. Kaminari, Gyro, IzuOcha stuttered. What are you two doing here? Remember that incident last month when the scaffolding from that building fell and this idiot tackled me out of the way from getting crushed? Gyro asked, pointing a thumb at Kaminari. Well, apparently I owe him a favor, so he brought me to this restaurant. A sudden cough caused the four of them to turn their attention toward Mika. Well, it's a shame you didn't complete the challenge, she said, causing Midoriya and IzuOcha to blush. But you two did win a free meal voucher for this restaurant. We'll use it for our meal, please, Midoriya said, glancing downward. Both students were red in the face and could barely look at each other. With the meal all paid for, they quickly grabbed their things and left the restaurant. You think I interrupted something between them? Kaminari asked. The earphone jack user only shook her head while they went to their table. I can't believe that electric brain moron ruined that part of the plan, Mina exclaimed once she had paid their waitress. That whole biscuit challenge was the reason I suggested this restaurant to your mama. She looked at Eri, who had an expression of sadness and disappointment on her face. But don't lose heart, Eri, she continued while they made their way to the doors. There's still one plan I have for your papa and mama. If it doesn't get them to confess, and I don't know why. Pinky short stack. Mina and Eri looked up, only for their eyes to widen when they saw Bakugou and a slim girl with fawn-colored hair standing next to him. Mina recognized the girl from the Provisional Hero License exam last year. She had been part of the group from Shikzu High School. Were you two spying on Deku and Round Face? Never mind what we're doing here, Mina said. What are you doing here with? I'm so sorry, I just can't seem to remember your name. It's all right, the girl said. Name's Kami Utsushimi, Bakubi's girlfriend. Mina gaped at the news. How many times have I told you not to call me B? Bakugou asked through gritted teeth. Aw, but it totes sweets you, B, Kami said before turning her attention back to Mina. And you are? Mina Ashido. I'm one of Bakugou's classmates, the acid user said before glancing down at Eri. And this little one is Eri. She lives with me, Bakugou. and the rest of our classmates. She noticed Kami's confused look. After a few of us rescued her from some villains, the principal put us in charge of her. Oh, Kami said before her smile returned. She knelt down and smiled at Eri. Hey, Eri, name's Kami. Nice to meet you. Upon her greeting, Kami saw Eri scuffle behind Mina's leg and cling to it in fear. Kami extended an open palm. It's okay, Eri. I know Bakugou. You can totes trust me. After a few moments of thought, Eri decided to make her way toward Kami, stepping hesitantly until she placed her hand in hers. Kami's hand was soft and smooth like IzuOcha's. Eri looked into Kami's eyes and saw trust and comfort, which caused her to ease up. Kami's gaze moved to her horn. OMG, Eri, your horn is totes adorable. Eri giggled at her sudden excitement. Kami touched it gently while maintaining her smile at Eri, who returned said smile in response. Mina met Bakugou's signature glare. He got in her face and whispered, tell anyone about her, even KiriMina, and you're dead, Pinky. Mina only gave an evil smile at Bakugou's threat. Oh, don't worry, Bakugou. As long as you remain a good boy and don't tell Midoriya and IzuOcha about us following them, nobody has to know about you and your girlfriend. She said the last word in a sing-song voice. Bakugou only scowled, his cheeks turning a bright pink. Well, Mina said, taking Eri by the hand, it was nice to meet you, Kami, but we have to go. Say bye, Eri. Bye, Ms. Kami. Bye, Kakin, Eri said before she followed Mina through the restaurant doors. It was nice to meet Mina, Kami said, watching the two of them leave. And Eri was totes adorable. Yeah, she's really precious, Bakugou said through gritted teeth. Midoriya and IzuOcha were walking around the city with red faces. Even after they had left the restaurant, they had avoided looking at each other out of embarrassment for participating in that challenge. After walking for almost half an hour, they came upon a park with a large gazebo in the middle. Looking around, they saw families enjoying the sunshine or playing, couples holding hands or dancing, and a band playing music in the gazebo. The two students noticed an empty bench close to them and decided to take a break. It was after a few minutes of silence that IzuOcha finally spoke up. Deku, she began before taking a deep breath to steady herself. I just wanted to say that I'm sorry if I made you uncomfortable back at the restaurant. I wasn't thinking about your feelings and… No, IzuOcha, don't, Midoriya said. You shouldn't apologize. I agreed to take part in that contest with you. You just seemed so happy that I didn't want to disappoint you by saying no. And besides, he added before glancing at IzuOcha with a smile, we got a free meal out of it. IzuOcha couldn't help but smile along with Midoriya. No matter the situation or how upset she was, she could always count on his smile and kind words to make anything seem better than it was. It was one of the many reasons why she liked him so much. So, she said after a minute of silence, how about we put the incident behind us and just enjoy the rest of the day? Sounds great, Midoriya said, still maintaining his contagious smile. Alright, all you happy couples out there, the lead singer of the band called out. Since it's Valentine's Day, we're gonna be playing some love ads for you. First on our lineup is the song Love performed by our very own Pat Cole. A middle-aged man walked up to the microphone and waved at those who were applauding. He nodded to the band, who began to play a classic jazz tune. Pat then snapped his fingers and began to sing. As the song began, many couples began to swing and sway to the beat of the music. Even Midoriya and IzuOcha were bopping to the rhythm and smiling. Midoriya turned to IzuOcha and an image of the two of them dancing together popped into his mind. His face turned a shade of red at the thought, but something inside him told him to do something he had never done before: ask a girl to dance with him. I mean, he thought, it would just be some dancing between friends, nothing more. As the song reached its instrumental bridge, Midoriya knew that this was the moment to ask. He stood up, turned to IzuOcha, and asked, IzuOcha, would you like to dance too? Mean? It's okay if you don't want. 3 just. Sure, Midoriya asked. Sure, IzuOcha repeated before taking his hand. I'd love to dance. Oh, Midoriya said in surprise. Gee, great. He led her to the brick pathway and placed his right hand against her waist. IzuOcha placed her left hand on his right shoulder, with her pinky raised in order to prevent him from floating away. They began to sway to the music as Pat picked up on the song. While the music continued to play, IzuOcha and Midoriya both began to calm down and smile at each other. Both soon laughed a bit at how much fun they were having, even if they were just swaying and not actually dancing. The song came to an end and the two friends clapped along with everyone else when Pat Cole took a bow and returned to his seat and instrument. Thanks, Pat, the lead singer of the band said. Mina and Eri were hiding in a bush near the pathway, watching Midoriya and IzuOcha. And you're sure this will work? Auntie Eri asked. Trust me, sweetie, it will, Mina said with a smile. I gave the band a hefty tip to play a song I requested. Your mama and papa will be in no time. And now, the lead singer announced, we'll be playing one of our hits, You're in Love. He picked up a guitar and started strumming it. After a few seconds, he sang. Many couples moved closer as they danced to the slow rhythm, Midoriya and IzuOcha among them. Midoriya placed both hands around IzuOcha's waist while IzuOcha placed her hands on Midoriya's shoulders. Once they felt comfortable, they began to move in a circle. IzuOcha and Midoriya looked at each other and soon realized how close their faces were. She was able to make out the smallest freckle on his face while he was able to make out the scent of her lavender perfume. IzuOcha looked into Midoriya's green eyes and saw the boy who had saved her when they first met. The boy whose words and determination gave her the strength to continue on with her dream. The boy she had feelings for, but had pushed them away so she could become a great hero just like him. Midoriya was looking into IzuOcha's eyes and saw the girl who always saw the good in things. The girl who always greeted the day with a smile. The girl ... who he had feelings for, but had pushed them aside because he felt that she deserved someone better than him. Looking at each other, they lost track of everything else. A new sensation built up inside both of them. Neither one could tell what it was, but that it felt strangely good. IzuOcha, Midoriya whispered. There's something I have to. Ochako, how Midoriya asked in confusion. Ochako only looked at him. That's my first name, Ochako. Oh ... okay, Midoriya said, almost on instinct. IzuOcha and Midoriya closed their eyes and slowly leaned in toward each other, attempting to close the gap between their lips. ACHOO. IzuOcha and Midoriya retracted from each other in surprise. You heard that, right? Midoriya asked. Yeah, IzuOcha said. And it sounded very familiar. It came from over there, Midoriya added, pointing to a bush on his right. The two of them walked over and were surprised to find a certain one-horned angel and a girl with pink skin and pink hair hiding there with their backs turned to them. KiriMina, Midoriya asked. Mina and Eri whipped right around to see Midoriya and IzuOcha staring at them. Midoriya, Ochako, Mina exclaimed with false excitement. What are you guys doing here? We were spending time together, IzuOcha said before her features went dark. Why are you two hiding in the bushes and spying on us? She picked up the set of binoculars next to the bush. Well, Mina said while Eri fidgeted nervously. You see, thing is, Midoriya crossed his arms and frowned. I believe you two have some explaining to do, he said. So, let me get this straight, Midoriya said after Mina had told them the whole story. This entire excursion was just a setup to make IzuOcha and I confess our feelings for each other, and Mina and Eri nodded in unison. I cannot believe you, Mina, IzuOcha exclaimed while glaring at the acid user. This was highly irresponsible and downright manipulative. And to top it all off, you got Eri involved in it. I mean, what were you thinking, dragging her into something like this? Mama, stop, Eri cried out. It's not Auntie Mina's fault, it's mine. At this revelation, Midoriya's and IzuOcha's eyes widened in shock. I saw how you and Papa got nervous around each other and I thought that it was because you loved each other, but were afraid to show it. I wanted you to show your love to each other so we could be more like a family. That's why I asked Auntie Mina for help. Don't punish her, punish me. At this, Eri couldn't stop the flow of tears that ran down her face. Midoriya's and IzuOcha's features immediately softened. They both looked at each other with concern and understanding before directing their attention back at the little girl. Sweetheart, Midoriya said in a calm manner. Do you know why Mama and I were so upset about this whole thing? Eri shook her head. It was because we felt like we were being used and it made us feel uncomfortable knowing that. You should never try to force something onto two people because it might damage the relationship they already have and that could hurt them in more ways than one. But that doesn't mean we don't love you any less, honey, IzuOcha said, kneeling down and placing her hand on Eri's cheek to wipe her tears away. And we are proud of you for being honest and admitting your mistakes. And just because Papa and I aren't together doesn't mean we are less of a family. Am I going to be punished? Eri asked through her sniffles. Midoriya and IzuOcha once again looked at each other and nodded. No, IzuOcha said. We think you've been punished enough and you seem to have learned your lesson. But if you do this again, there will be consequences. Understand? Eri nodded. The two students pulled Eri into a tight embrace. Now then, Midoriya said once the trio finished hugging. How about we all go home? Eri and IzuOcha nodded. The sun was going down and it had been a long day. Eri took a hand each and walked between them. Well, Mina said, who was walking alongside IzuOcha, today certainly has been interesting. Oh, don't think you're off the hook just yet, Mina, IzuOcha said while glaring at the acid user. You're still in trouble for getting Eri involved. Wait, what? After the four of them returned to Alliance Heights, the rest of the day was uneventful. When asked by their fellow classmates how their excursion had been, IzuOcha and Midoriya merely stated that they'd had fun. Of course, there was an incident later on in which Kaminari sustained injuries for blabbing about Bakugou dating Kami Utsushimi. Now, Eri, Midoriya said once they had tucked her into bed. What did we learn? Don't play matchmaker, Eri said while clutching her Deku plushie. Exactly, IzuOcha said before leaning over and ending her horn gently. Okay, Munchkin, good night. With that, Eri rested her head and closed her eyes. Midoriya and IzuOcha walked back slowly in order to not wake her. It was only after they had closed the door behind them that they started laughing. Wow, IzuOcha said, she certainly is something. Tell me about it, Midoriya said before shaking his head. We're going to have to watch our backs around her from now on. After a few minutes of laughing, they calmed themselves. Hey, Deku, IzuOcha said, her tone becoming more serious. Can I ask you a question? Sure, what is it? IzuOcha gulped. When we danced ... did you feel anything unusual like something warm? Midoriya hesitated at her question. Why yeah, he replied. I see, IzuOcha said. Truth be told, I've felt it before in the past. Why you have? Midoriya asked. When? Well, IzuOcha's face turned bright pink. It happens whenever I look at you or see you in action. She looked him right in the eyes. Because the truth is, I really like you, Deku. Midoriya's eyes widened, but he didn't say anything. I've liked you for a very long time, Deku, IzuOcha continued. Ever since you saved me during the entrance exam, I started having these feelings that I couldn't explain at the time. But after I got to know you more and saw you in action, I began to understand them more. You never seem to lose hope in the darkest of times. You're always willing to help those in need, and you always give me the strength to accomplish my own goal. It's because of who you are and what you do that I understood that these feelings I have for you are more than just liking you as a friend. But when I realized I liked you more than as a friend, I knew that in order for us to accomplish both our dreams, I had to push aside these feelings. And besides, she added, I figured you deserved someone better than me. I mean, I'm just some plain, boring girl who can't even eat. Midoriya pulled her into a tight embrace. IzuOcha, stop, Midoriya said softly. I don't see you as some plain, boring girl. You're the most amazing girl I've ever met in my life. I've always admired how you see the good in every situation and greet the day with a smile. Whenever I begin to lose hope, you're always there for me. And just like how I give you the strength to work toward your goal, you give me the strength to achieve mine. IzuOcha couldn't help but smile at Midoriya's words. Truth be told, Midoriya continued, I also pushed my feelings for you aside because I felt that you deserved someone way better than me, like Ida or Todoroki. I mean, who would want to be with a nobody like me, a late bloomer in regards to his quirk who? IzuOcha broke away from the embrace and placed her hands on Midoriya's cheeks. She gave him a stern look before speaking. I'm going to stop you right there, Deku, because there are a few things I need to tell you. First, I don't ever want to hear you say that about yourself. You are an amazing person who is selfless, caring, brave, honest, and who is willing to fight for what he believes in, no matter what. Understand? She waited for Midoriya to nod before she continued. Second, Ida is a great guy, but he's like a brother to me. As for Todoroki, he's a bit dense when it comes to girls. And Momo kinda has feelings for him already, so he's off limits. IzuOcha's gaze softened as she continued. And finally, stop calling me IzuOcha. I told you at the park that my name is Ochako. I wouldn't mind if you started using my first name. Oh okay, Midoriya said before taking a hold of IzuOcha's wrists and gently pulling her hands from his cheeks. And you can call me Izuku. I mean, that's if you want to. Don't want to pressure you or anything. I mean, I'm fine with just Deku. As sure, IzuOcha said. To mean, we can use our first names whenever we're alone or if we're with you. Oh, Midoriya said before calming himself down. Oh okay. The two continued to stand in silence, still holding hands, until IzuOcha spoke up. So ... what are we now? Are we friends? Are we something more? I'm not sure exactly, Midoriya said. I like you a lot, IzuOcha, but I don't want to ruin what we already have. IzuOcha's eyes lit up. Then how about this? She started. We make a pact that, no matter what happens between us, we'll always be friends. I don't want to ruin what we have either, Izuku, but I'm not afraid to try and see if we could be more than just friends. Midoriya thought about it for a moment. A smile grew on his face and he said, yeah, no matter what, we'll still be friends. They stood there, smiling at each other, before Midoriya spoke. So, I guess we're dating now, he asked. To guess so, IzuOcha said. The two of them realized how close they were to each other. IzuOcha had her hands on Midoriya's while he had his hands on her hips. The heavy breathing between them caused both their cheeks to heat up. Oh, Ochako, Midoriya whispered, is it okay if I? As sure, she whispered back, knowing full well what he was asking permission for. Gulping, Midoriya began leaning toward her, his eyes slowly closing while she followed suit. After what felt like an eternity, their lips finally connected with each other. It was a clumsy first. It was off-centered and hesitant at the same time. But to the two students, it was perfect. They continued the awkward until they pulled apart for some air. I'm sorry, Ochako, Midoriya said. I'm sure it wasn't the best ever. It's okay, Izuku, IzuOcha said. They stood in silence again before she continued with, We could have a duver if you want. Oh okay, Midoriya said. And before he knew it, IzuOcha had pressed her lips against his. Midoriya stiffened at first, but after a few seconds he had her back. IzuOcha took the opportunity to move her hands from Midoriya's to his shoulders. For the two Friendster lovers, time stood still. The rest of the world could go about in the same way. What mattered most was this moment with just themselves and no one else. Neither of them noticed a smirking Mina taking pictures of them on her phone from the corner of the hallway, nor a smiling Eri peeking through the open bedroom door. Bonus content 1. Kyoka Gyro was lying on her bed and looking up at the ceiling. It had been one hell of a day. First, she was asked by Kaminari to go out for lunch. Then, the blonde idiot had to interrupt whatever Midoriya and IzuOcha were doing at the restaurant. After that, he had ordered the spiciest meal at the restaurant. He had screamed so loud that they were thrown out. And of course, Kaminari just had to open his mouth about Bakugou dating that Utsushimi girl. That, of course, resulted in Bakugou blasting him with his quirk. Gyro only sighed and DD her right arm over her eyes. At least the day was over. A sudden ping from her phone caught her attention. She unlocked her screen and her eyes widened at what she saw. It was a picture of her and Kaminari taken while they were walking to the restaurant. Kaminari was holding the phone with one hand while his other was placed on Gyro's right hip. Gyro herself looked tense while she glanced away from both Kaminari and the phone. It was while looking at the picture that Gyro remembered that there were some moments about the day that were good, like how he wanted her to choose the restaurant so she could enjoy herself, or how they shared similar interests when it came to music. And there was that moment when he lightly ate her on the cheek and thanked her for spending time with him before she went to bed. Gyro lowered her phone onto her and rested both hands on it before closing her eyes. He's an idiot. A small smile formed on her lips. Bonus content too. Earlier that day, Midoriya was at her favorite cafe, waiting for her date to arrive. She was nervous. This was the first time she had ever tried dating since she met Hisashi almost 20 years ago. One might say it had been love at first sight. She always knew how to make him laugh, shared her secrets with him, and was more than willing to help him in any way she could. Hisashi, in turn, made her feel safe and warm, knew how to make her smile, and cared for her enough to let her into his life. Her features saddened when she remembered how happy she was with him before the unfortunate incident. 17 years ago, Hisashi had been called to handle a hostage situation in downtown Tokyo involving a rich CEO's family and a gang of villains. The mission was a success, but Hisashi had sacrificed himself to save a child from falling debris. Inko remembered how devastated she had been when she heard the news. It was like her life had ended. 7 months later, Izuku was born. When he was old enough to ask where his father was, Inko couldn't bring herself to tell him the truth. So she fabricated a story that Hisashi was off in the States doing hero work. Fortunately for her, little Izuku believed it. When he got older, however, Inko suspected that her son knew the truth, but didn't want to upset her by telling her so. Truth be told, Inko had been contemplating dating again for years. However, she always held back in fear of her son being hurt by the idea that she was replacing his father with someone else. But after seeing how Izuku looked at that IzuOcha girl, she figured that now was as great a time as any to start getting back on the market. The bell over the entrance rang, indicating the arrival of a new customer. Inko looked up above the crowd and smiled when she saw her date approaching. "Sorry I'm late," he said before sitting down. "Traffic was a nightmare." "It's quite all right," Inko said with a warm smile. "I hope you don't mind I ordered your coffee for you." "Don't worry about it," he said, taking a sip of the caffeinated drink. "It's delicious." Setting the cup down, he glanced at Inko. "To be honest, I was a bit surprised that you agreed to meet me here. Well, I figured since my Izuku is growing up and might leave the house one day, it was time to start dating again. And," she looked at him before continuing, "I wanted to personally thank you for everything that you've done for me and Izuku." Her date nodded. "It's no trouble at all, Ms. Midoriya." To his surprise, Inko giggled and placed her hand on top of his before saying, "Please, no need for formalities. Call me Inko." The man returned the smile and placed his other bony hand over hers. "Very well, Inko," he said, "call me Toshinori." Smash! Midoriya leapt to the side, narrowly avoiding being crushed by the gigantic robot's fist. The city district was in shambles. Some of the buildings were nothing but rubble and half the street was destroyed. Noticing that the robot started turning toward him, he knew he had to stop it once and for all. When the robot stopped turning, Midoriya activated full cowl and leapt into the air. "Detroit," Midoriya said as he ate his hand into a fist. Smash! His fist connected with the robot's head, causing the metal to bend and break. The robot keeled over backwards and crashed to the ground. Midoriya's feet found solid ground, and he waited in case of an oncoming attack. Only when the robot shut down did he relax. "Not bad, Midoriya." The boy turned to see Mr. Aizawa come out of a hidden doorway along with the rest of Class 1A. They were in a giant circular room at UA that provided virtual reality simulations for training purposes. The room's computer had data on every student at the school and would calibrate different scenarios based on the student's quirk. "You were able to beat the robot within the time limit," Mr. Aizawa continued, "but your environmental damage could have been minimized. Remember, you and your opponent are not the only ones around. You should always be mindful of other heroes, civilians, property around you, and how your actions could affect them." "Right," he added, turning to the rest of the class. "That's all for today." Class dismissed. The rest of the class dispersed, with one girl in particular rushing toward Midoriya. "You're not hurt, are you, Deku?" she asked, concerned. "I'm fine, IzuOcha." he said. Just a few scratches and SCS, but nothing too serious. How about you? Still a little nauseous from making too many things float, she admitted, rubbing the back of her head. But other than that, I'm fine. Glad to hear, Midoriya said, smiling at his girlfriend while she did the same. For a few moments, they remained where they were until... "Ah, young love," Zero teased. "Doesn't it just warm your heart?" IzuOcha and Midoriya's faces reddened while some of their classmates snickered at Zero's remark. "I think it's sweet that she's concerned," Toru said. "It just shows how much she cares about him." The two lovers sighed in defeat. It had been 2 weeks since they went on their date, and they had confessed their feelings toward each other. Unbeknownst to them, Mina had spread the news to the rest of the class. Needless to say, there were some mixed reactions when Midoriya and IzuOcha came downstairs the next day. The girls, besides Mina, rushed IzuOcha, squealing with delight and asking for details on how it happened. Most of the boys, including KiriMina and Kaminari, congratulated Midoriya on finally confessing his feelings toward her. Others, like Takoyami and Shoji, only nodded in approval. Mineta ended up sobbing and berating Midoriya for stealing his chance to cop a feel, which earned him a stab in the eye from Kyoka's earphone jack. Ada managed to pull both of them aside and expressed his happiness in knowing that his two best friends were together. The only one who didn't participate in the festivities was Bakugou, who only gave his signature glare before eating his breakfast. Midoriya wasn't bothered by it. He knew Bakugou wasn't the type to give compliments. As the boys were getting changed into their school uniforms, Midoriya smiled a bit at the thought of IzuOcha, despite the periodic teasing from his classmates. He was happy with their relationship, since this was the first relationship for both of them. They were currently taking things slow and easy. They were only affectionate toward each other when it was just themselves. They would from time to time, but those were only simple ease that weren't too intimate, and they called each other by their first names, but only in private. But for some reason, it didn't seem to bother them. They both felt, given their current situation, that this was acceptable. Midoriya's smile widened at the thought of Eri being elated that her mama and papa were finally together. "Hey, Deku." A gruff voice snapped Midoriya out of his thoughts. He looked around and only saw Bakugou next to him. The others had left to return to the dorms. "Why yes, Kaken. What is it?" he asked nervously, his classmates' glare boring into him. "So you and Roundface are officially dating?" Bakugou asked, his gaze never leaving Midoriya. "Oh," Midoriya said before scratching the back of his head. "Yes, we are. 3 mean. We still haven't gone on an official date, but we do K. Deku, I don't really give a shit if you two are together or not. What I want to know is ... have you told her yet?" Midoriya only stared in confusion at Bakugou's words before asking, "Told her what?" "Don't play dumb with me, shithead." Midoriya flinched. "I'm asking if you told Roundface about your quirk." "Oh," Midoriya said before his face turned pale. "Well, no, just don't see why I should." Bakugou grabbed Midoriya by the collar of his shirt and pinned him against the lockers. "Listen, dumbass, I get that shit like that is confidential, but you have to tell her." "But why?" "Because you're in a relationship with her, moron," Bakugou added. "Relationships are based on trust. And if you can't be honest with her about shit like this, how can she trust you in the future?" But All Might said, "I don't give a shit what All Might says. Decide for yourself for once without using that bony skeleton as an excuse." Midoriya felt Bakugou's grip against his collar loosen. "Listen, Deku," Bakugou said, "do whatever you want, but if Roundface finds out later rather than sooner and she doesn't trust you afterwards, don't say I didn't warn you." And with that, Bakugou left the locker room, leaving Midoriya with his thoughts. For the next few days, Bakugou's words racked inside Midoriya's head. There were some points during the day when he was so distracted by the thought that he would miss a question in class or an order during training. When any of his classmates asked if he was all right, Midoriya would say yes and that he was just tired. "What should I do?" he kept asking himself. "Should I tell Ochako, or shouldn't I? I mean, we're in a relationship and she trusts me. But if I told her, what if she doesn't see me as this great hero and breaks up with me? What if I tell her and it's not even Ochako? What if it's some villain in disguise who'd be willing to give that information to the league? Then everyone I know and love will be in danger and..." "Izuku." Midoriya cried out in surprise. He turned around to see IzuOcha looking at him in concern. "Are you okay?" IzuOcha asked. "You've been acting very strange these past few days. Is something bothering you?" "And no, nothing's wrong. I'm fine. I just haven't had enough sleep lately." His nervous grin soon faltered when he noticed the doubt in IzuOcha's eyes. "Are you sure?" Izuku cupped his cheek. "You know you can talk to me if something is bothering you." Midoriya smiled before taking her hand gently in his and moving it from his face. He felt extremely lucky to have a girlfriend who cared about him as she did. "I'm fine, Ochako, honest," he said. "I've just had a lot on my plate lately." His cell phone vibrated, indicating a message. Midoriya picked it up, read it, and pocketed it. "I gotta go," he said. "My weekly meeting with All Might. I'll see you later." He then gave her a quick peck on the cheek before turning and walking away. "I'll see you when you get back, Izuku." He heard IzuOcha call out. Once again, he failed to hide the smile on his face when he heard her say his name. That smile soon faltered when he remembered that he was hiding his secret from her. Maybe it was something he could talk to All Might about. After walking for 10 minutes, he arrived at the faculty break room. Young Midoriya, his mentor, said upon seeing him, "Nice of you to join me. I hope things are going well for you." Midoriya only nodded before taking a seat across from him. "I've spoken to your teachers. They say your grasp on your quirk has improved and your academic scores have remained consistently high. We may have to do something about Black Whip, though. Perhaps I could talk to Nezu about holding a private training. See, are you listening, my boy?" It was then that Midoriya noticed All Might looking at him inquisitively. "Something's troubling you, young Midoriya," the former #1 hero stated after a few more seconds of silence. "What is it?" Midoriya gulped at his mentor's question and twiddled his thumbs nervously. "Well, All Might," he began, gazing downward. "Too have been thinking lately and ... well ... he clenched his fists before shouting, "I've been thinking about telling IzuOcha about my quirk." There was a deafening silence as Midoriya's statement echoed throughout the room. Midoriya kept his eyes shut, waiting for the impending lecture he was expecting to get. After a few moments of silence, however, he opened his eyes to see All Might with a neutral look on his face. "Too mean. I know you said not to tell people about One for All," Midoriya continued, "but I trust IzuOcha. I know she can keep a secret and not tell anyone. But then again, I could be putting her life in danger by letting her know about One for All's secret." Young Midoriya. Midoriya immediately went quiet as he glanced at his mentor. The former hero's face remained neutral as he asked, "You said you trust her, correct?" "Yeah," All Might sighed before saying, "If you think that she can be trusted, then tell her. I cannot tell you what to do. You have to decide that for yourself. But I am warning you now, young Midoriya." The boy gulped as All Might frowned. "Be careful who you reveal this information to. The risk of any villain finding out will grow whenever you tell others about One for All. It will not only endanger you, but those you care about as well." Midoriya only nodded. "Very well," All Might said, his features softening. "If that is all you wish to talk about, then I suggest you get back to your dormitory." "Yes, sir," Midoriya said, picking up his backpack. "Wait." All Might's voice stopped him from opening the door. "Your mother wanted me to tell you to call her when you get the chance. She wants to discuss something with you." Okay," Midoriya said, failing to hide the concern and confusion in his voice. And with that, he left the office. Some time later, he found himself back at Alliance Heights, where he was greeted by his friends, IzuOcha and Eri. While Ada was busy getting the ingredients for dinner, Midoriya pulled out his phone and sent a message to IzuOcha that said, "I need to talk to you in private after dinner. Is that all right?" His gaze turned toward her just in time to see her open her phone and stare at it. Her gaze then met his and she nodded silently before resuming her conversation with Mina and Toro. Dinner turned out to be katsudon, sliced tonkatsu cooked with a mixture of eggs and onions and served over a bowl of rice. As the students ate their meal, some also listened in on Eri, who talked about her school day and how the teacher had brought a guinea pig to class. Midoriya, meanwhile, kept his gaze at IzuOcha, looking for any signs of worry. But she seemed as calm as ever as she talked to Momo about today's lesson and where she could improve her hero skills. After everyone had finished with their meals, Midoriya made his way upstairs to his room. He sat on the bed, breathing slowly in order to gather his thoughts. He didn't have to wait long as he heard knocking on the other end of his door. He opened it to reveal IzuOcha standing before him. Hi. The two stood in awkward silence until Midoriya moved to the side in order to let her in. When she did, Midoriya locked the door behind them and set himself down on the bed next to IzuOcha. "So," she began, "what did you want to talk to me about?" "Well," Midoriya began, "the truth is, He paused, unsure of how to tell her. Finally deciding to just rip the figurative band-aid off, he took a deep breath and turned to his girlfriend with a look of determination. "Okay," he resumed, "what I am about to tell you cannot leave this room. The fewer people know, the better. I'm only telling you this because I trust you and I don't want to keep any secrets from you." Okay, IzuOcha said. "The truth is," Midoriya stated once again before looking down at his right hand, "my quirk ... I isn't my own." How, IzuOcha asked in confusion. Midoriya sighed. "Do you remember All for One, All Might's nemesis?" He waited for IzuOcha to nod her head before he continued. "Well, he has the ability to steal others' quirks and give them away. One day, he decided to forcibly give his seemingly quirkless little brother a quirk that allowed him to stockpile power within his body. What neither of them realized was that the little brother already had a quirk with no effect other than that it could be transferred to others. His quirk and the quirk given to him by All for One merged into one and became One for All." He paused so that IzuOcha could take all of that information in. Having a deep-seated sense of justice, the little brother tried to stop All for One, but he ultimately failed. He then decided to entrust One for All to future generations of heroes, hoping that one day, it would be strong enough to stop All for One. As time went on, One for All grew stronger with each user. It was passed on through 6 users before it was wielded by All Might. But, Uraraka said in confusion. What does all of that have to do with you? Midoriya sighed. Because I'm the current holder of One for All. He heard Uraraka utter a gasp at the revelation. I was born without a quirk. My original destiny was to be a nobody, someone whose life meant nothing and would be nothing. For that, I was ridiculed by my fellow classmates, even during middle school. He paused to smile. Then I met All Might. Originally, he told me that I couldn't be a hero without a quirk and that there was honor in being a policeman. But then he saw me trying to save Kaken from a slime monster and he changed his mind. He decided to make me his pupil and the 9th user of One for All. Ever since then, I've been using it as my quirk. The words reverberated around the room when Midoriya finished his story. Though he wanted to feel as if a huge weight had been lifted off his shoulders, he still wanted to hear Uraraka talk and ask questions first. Why didn't you tell me? She asked after what felt like an eternity. Why are you telling me this now? It's like I said, Midoriya admitted, I trust you. I also wanted to tell you because I don't want any secrets between us now that we're dating. But, he said while his features saddened. All Might also warned me that the risk of any villain finding out grows if I tell others about One for All. It would not only endanger me, but those I care about as well. He then looked at Uraraka and said, and I didn't want anyone I care about to get hurt, especially you, my mom, and Eri. Midoriya felt a hand grip as he looked down to see Uraraka holding his hand. He looked back up to see her face. Wow, she said, that sure is a lot to take in all at once. Does anyone else know about this? Only a select few, he admitted. Principal Nezu, Gran Torino, Recovery Girl, All for One, a detective on the police force named Tsukachi Naomasa, and Kaken. Uraraka glanced up at her boyfriend. Well, I'm glad that you told me the truth and that you trust me with this information. But I want you to promise me a few things. She waited for Midoriya to nod before she continued. First, no more secrets between us. We share everything with each other. Her expression softened. Second, if something is bothering you, don't be afraid to talk to me about it. I'm your girlfriend. I want to be here for you and help you in any way. Midoriya smiled. Sure thing, Ochako. And in turn, he added, you can talk to me if something is bothering you as well. He waited for her to nod in agreement before moving a strand of hair behind her ear, ending her. He then felt her lips press against his and her right hand caressing his cheek, which caused him to smile against. After a while, the two broke apart for air. They smiled before resting their foreheads against each other, not wanting the moment to end. Knock knock. The two jumped at the sound coming from outside the door. Who is it? Midoriya asked. Mama Papa Iri's small voice called out. Are you okay? You've been gone for a while. Both students sighed in relief knowing it was just Iri and not one of their classmates. We're okay, sweetie, Uraraka said. Papa and I were just having a talk. We'll be down in a minute. Okay. The response was soon followed by the sound of little feet walking away. Once they faded away, Uraraka and Midoriya both looked at each other and laughed at how freaked out they were at almost being caught. Ready to head back downstairs, Midoriya asked once they had composed themselves. Uraraka nodded, and together they both met up with Iri and the others. Uraraka, Izuku and Ko said when she saw the two students standing outside her door. It's so good to see you both. Hi, Mom. Hello, Mrs. Midoriya. And Ko hugged her son tightly before hugging Uraraka with equal affection. Midoriya couldn't help but smile at how warmly his mother treated his girlfriend. When he had called her a week ago to tell her about he and Uraraka being together, he thought she would have a panic attack and cry. However, she ended up loving the concept that her son had found someone who loved him for who he was. I hope you didn't have any trouble getting here, and Ko said after she shut the door. Not at all, Midoriya said as they made their way to the living room. We hit a few snags here and there on the train, but we were able to get here no pro. He paused when he noticed a familiar figure sitting on the couch. All Might. Ah, young Midoriya, Uraraka, All Might said with a small smile before indicating to the two chairs across from him. Please, have a seat. Uraraka and Midoriya both sat down in confusion. They hadn't expected All Might to be here when they had agreed to visit Inko. The three sat in awkward silence while Inko prepared some tea. All Might drummed his fingers on his cane. Midoriya tapped the back of his feet on the floor, and Uraraka occupied herself by glancing away and looking at her surroundings. After a while, Inko returned with said tea and sat down next to All Might while Midoriya and Uraraka both poured themselves a cup. Wow, Mrs. Midoriya, Uraraka said after she took a sip, this tea is really great. Thank you, Uraraka, Inko said, but it really was nothing. All Might and Midoriya couldn't help but smile at how bashful Inko was. However, she added, her expression turning serious, there is a reason I wanted you to come here. She turned to Midoriya and said, Izuku, there's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you years ago, but I was too afraid to say it. She then froze in fear, afraid to tell him the truth. It was then that she felt a bony hand rest on her shoulder. She turned to look at All Might, who gave her a small smile of reassurance. Izuku, Inko continued once she composed herself. The truth is ... your father isn't working in the state. He's been dead for almost 17 years. She waited for the words to sink in as IzuOcha covered her mouth in shock and Midoriya's eyes widened. Inko breathed deeply before continuing. He had been called to handle a hostage situation in downtown Tokyo involving a rich CEO's family and a gang of villains. Even though it was a success, he sacrificed himself to save a child from falling debris. 4 years later, when you asked me where he was, I couldn't bring myself to tell you the truth. So I fabricated a story that he was off in the States doing hero work. Silence filled the room as Inko finished her story. All Might wore a neutral expression while IzuOcha looked shocked. Midoriya, however, kept his gaze at the ground as he rose from his chair and began to walk towards Inko. It was then that tears began to fall from Inko's eyes. "I'm so sorry, Izuku," she said through her tears. "To know I should have told you years ago, but I was too afraid that you'd hate me for lying to you. I understand if you're mad at me and never want to speak to me again." "Mom, it's okay," Midoriya said, causing his mother to look up in surprise. "I get why you lied to me. I was a little kid. I probably would have been more confused if you had told the truth back then. And if I'm going to be honest, I had a feeling that Dad wasn't in the States. I didn't admit it because I wanted you to say it when you felt comfortable." He smiled as he added, "But I could never hate you. Mom, please don't ever think that I would or will." Inko's eyes soon sprouted fresh tears as she hugged her son. Midoriya hugged her back and soon he began to cry as well. All Might smiled as he looked on at the spectacle before him while IzuOcha wiped away her own tears. After a few minutes, the two separated from each other. "Thanks for telling me the truth, Mom," Midoriya said once he composed himself and had wiped away his tears. "I appreciate it." After a slight pause, he added, "So what else is new?" "Well, the truth is," Inko said in a more calming manner, "I've actually started dating again." "Really?" Midoriya asked in surprise. "That's great, Mom, I'm happy for you." "Yes, well," Inko said with a smile, "I figured it was time to put myself back on the market since you were living at school." Midoriya smiled. He truly was happy that his mother was dating someone. His mother was the kindest and most caring woman in the world, and she deserved to be with someone who would treat her the same way. It would be weird to see her with someone at first. But as long as she was happy, Midoriya was contented with whomever she was with. "So," he asked after sipping his cup of tea, "who's the lucky guy?" "Well," Inko paused as she smiled at All Might and took his hand into hers, which he responded to by squeezing it. IzuOcha, meanwhile, noticed this and let out an audible gasp. "Wow, congratulations to you both," she exclaimed with joy. "Well, I'm sure you'll both be happy together, right?" "Izuku," she cried out, for she had seen Midoriya frozen in place as if he had turned to stone, a look of utter shock etched on his face. Izuku, young Midoriya. "Izuku, my baby, please be okay." Midoriya then started shaking violently like a soda bottle that was ready to burst. Knowing what was to come, IzuOcha grabbed a nearby book and placed it over her head. Midoriya cried out as his tears gushed out like waterfalls. One of the waterfalls landed on the book covering IzuOcha while the other ended up on the floor. "MMY Mom and All Might are dating," he exclaimed before he gushed out another stream of tears. IzuOcha, meanwhile, looked at Inko and said, "I think he approves." It took some time to calm Midoriya down. When he had composed himself, he then asked, "So, when did you two start dating?" "About 3 weeks ago." Inko said, "I got in contact with All Might to ask how you were faring at school. And he asked me if I wanted to join him for a cup of coffee, to which I said yes." At that moment, All Might turned to Midoriya and said, "Young Midoriya, I want you to know that I am not trying to replace your father. I know that you just see me as your mentor and—" "All Might," Midoriya said, "it's okay. I know you would never intend to do that. And in all seriousness, I'm happy that you two are dating." He continued with a smile, "I couldn't think of two people who deserve each other more than you two." A cough caused him to turn and see IzuOcha give him a questioning look. "Too mean, besides us, of course." The scene caused All Might and Inko to chuckle. The rest of the stay was uneventful. IzuOcha told Inko what she planned to do once she became a hero, causing Inko to smile in admiration of the girl's desire to help her parents financially. Meanwhile, Midoriya told his mom and All Might about Eri and what she was learning in school. At some point in the conversation, he talked about how Eri was looking forward to seeing her grandma again. Inko blushed at the idea of being called a grandmother so soon. Soon, it was time for Midoriya and IzuOcha to head back to Alliance Heights. After saying their goodbyes, the two students made their way to the street. They turned back and waved at the adults, who smiled at each other and waved back. Midoriya felt something touch his hand. He looked down to see IzuOcha holding it. "I think your mom and All Might make a really great couple," she said while smiling. Midoriya returned the gesture before squeezing her hand. "Yeah, me too." Meteorologists are absolutely stunned by the intense heat wave hitting Japan today. While it is not unusual for hot weather to come in March, it does raise some questions as to how long this heat will last. City officials in Tokyo are encouraging citizens to find ways to stay cool or avoid going outside. Click, as if someone would be frickin' stupid enough to be outside, Bakugou said through gritted teeth. The rest of Class 1A nodded in agreement. They could do without this oppressive heat. Classes were tougher to get through, with the teachers having to talk over the fans they had set up. The humidity was so bad that the students were required to have mandatory water breaks in order to stay hydrated. They even had their training sessions indoors. Today, Class 1A was sitting in the living room of Alliance Heights with 5 fans blowing at their faces. The fans, however, were not enough to subdue the oppressive humidity that leaked through the windows via sunlight. Why did it have to be so hot today? Mina whined before wiping the sweat off her forehead. I feel like a fried egg ... and now I'm hungry, Kaminari stated while Gyro pinched the bridge of her nose at her classmates' randomness. Let's hope this wouldn't be the same for the summer, IzuOcha said before directing her attention to the little girl sitting in front of a fan. How are you holding up? Iri said. Girl only responded with a thumbs up. Why does she get a fan for herself? Minta whined as he splayed himself out on one of the armrests. Some of us are dying here, and she's not even breaking a sweat. Well, Minta, Ada began. Children are less able to regulate their body temperature compared with adults. Therefore, not keeping a child cool could lead to dehydration and other heat-related illnesses. And unlike you, she's not expendable, Bakugou snapped, causing the class pervert to flinch. It was at that moment that Ida's phone rang. He stood up and entered the other room before answering it. A few minutes later, he returned with a content smile on his face. I have good news, he said, getting the class attention. Mr. Aizawa has informed us that we are allowed to use the school pool for the day in order to stay cool. WOO! The rest of Class 1A cheered with excitement. Most of them immediately ran upstairs to get towels and sunscreen, leaving IzuOcha, Midoriya, and a confused Iri in the living room. What do you say? Iri, Midoriya asked. Want to swim in the pool? Swimmery asked curiously. Midoriya and IzuOcha looked at each other. They had forgotten that she might not have been taught how to swim before she was kept prisoner by Overhaul. Then again, it could be the perfect opportunity to teach her. It's basically playing around in a large bathtub, sweetie, Ochako explained, and it'll help keep you cool. Really? Iri asked, her eyes and mouth widening with excitement. Okay, she shouted as she raced upstairs to get ready. After a quick dash to the main campus, the boys and girls went to their respective locker rooms to get changed. Once they were all set, the boys stepped out and waited for the girls to come. When they arrived, Kaminari was still disappointed that they wore the knee-length swimsuits, though Minta still gave a perverted thumbs up upon seeing them. The opening of the girls' locker room door caused everyone to turn to see IzuOcha enter the area with Iri. The little girl was wearing a smaller version of the school swimsuit along with water wings on her upper arms. Her hair was also fashioned into a ponytail to keep it out of her eyes. The other girls swarmed her and doted on Iri's appearance, and she responded with a bright smile. Excellent, Ada said. Now that everyone is here, I suggest we try some exercises. We should always be up to date on our swimming techniques should a hero situation ever arise. Last one and is a rotten egg, Minta cried out before cannoning into the deep end, with Kaminari and KiriMina following suit. Soon, most of Class 1A joined in on the fun, splashing around and horseplaying to their heart's content. IzuOcha couldn't help but giggle a bit as she saw Ida trying to maintain order amongst his peers, but to no avail. IzuOcha, Hagakure called out, We're going to play volley. Want to join? Can't. IzuOcha said, Deku and I promised Iri we'd teach her how to swim. She then took Iri's hand and led her to the side of the pool. Midoriya, meanwhile, had gotten into the pool and stood in the shallow end near the edge. Okay, Iri, he said, we're going to start with you getting used to the water. Walk close to the edge of the pool and jump, I'll catch you. Iri walked over to the edge of the pool and froze as she looked down at the water. It looked so deep despite it being only 3 feet deep. She hid behind IzuOcha's legs and shook in fear. It's okay, Iri, IzuOcha said, kneeling down in front of the girl. The water's only 3 feet deep and you're about 4 feet tall. Besides, Izuku will catch you. You have nothing to worry about. Iri gulped as she moved back to the edge of the pool. She then closed her eyes and leapt forward, her feet skimming the surface of the water. She felt Midoriya's arms wrap around her as she hugged him like her life depended on it. It's okay, Iri. I've got you, he said while IzuOcha stepped into the water to join them. He then placed his hands underneath her arms and detached her from his body. Now, he continued, I'm going to slowly lower you into the water just so you can get used to it. I promise I wouldn't let go. Okay, he waited for Iri to nod before he began to lower her. He slowed down a little when he heard a little of fear coming from her. After a few seconds, Midoriya saw her feet touching the bottom. Okay, Iri, you can open your eyes. Iri opened her eyes slowly to see that her head was just above the surface of the water. She felt a sense of tranquility knowing that she wasn't going to drown, though it might also be the fact that Papa had a hold on her and wouldn't let go. The water felt incredibly cool and refreshing. Mama was right, it was like being in a giant bathtub. Satisfied that Iri was now comfortable, Izuku said, Okay, now we're going to start with staying afloat. Start by kicking your legs back and forth in the water. Oh okay, Eri said, still sounding a bit nervous. She closed her eyes before kicking her feet rapidly in the water. As she continued, she felt Midoriya's hands leave hers, causing her to move her arms back and forth as well. She opened her eyes and they widened as she saw herself staying afloat without any support. Papa, she exclaimed in excitement. Papa, I'm doing it. Great job, sweetie, IzuOcha said with a smile. She then brought over a board made of Eva foam. This is a kickboard. We're going to try kicking in order to swim. First, grab the end of the board with your hands. She waited as Eri took a hold of it before lifting her up so that the back of her body was out past the water's surface. Now, start kicking. Eri nodded and started kicking her feet rapidly. She slowly began to move across the water, IzuOcha's hands still holding onto her. IzuOcha then turned her body so that she remained in the shallow section of the pool. Eri's smile grew as she moved across the water with ease. The two of them did a lap around the shallow end before stopping by Midoriya. Will I always have to use this to swim? Eri asked, looking at the kickboard. Only for a little while, Midoriya said. But if you practice enough times, you'll be able to swim on your own. Want to have another go around the shallow end? Eri nodded, to which he smiled. IzuOcha, heads up. Toru's call caused IzuOcha to turn just in time to see the volley heading right toward her. That connected with her back, causing her to fall forward into Midoriya. IzuOcha, are you okay? He asked with concern. Yeah, I'm fine, IzuOcha said reassuringly. Thanks for being there, Deku. It was then that they both realized how close they were to each other. Even though she was covered, Midoriya could feel her curves through the fabric of her swimsuit. IzuOcha was no better. She blushed at her fingers touching Midoriya's bare, feeling every scar and muscle. They then leapt apart from each other, flustered beyond belief. Sorry, they exclaimed as most of their classmates snickered and giggled. We should probably head back, Ida said over the commotion. It's almost lunchtime. The others agreed. They had all cooled down significantly and a few were starting to get hungry. One by one, Class 1A exited the pool and grabbed towels to dry off. Midoriya grabbed one and dried Eri's face and hair. The fibers rubbing against her face and neck caused her to giggle, with Izuku smiling at her. IzuOcha then took her to the girls' locker room to get changed. Shinobu Nashimori stared out the window of his limousine at the ruins of Deku City. It was a little hard to believe that this was once the site of a fierce battle between the Metal Liberation Army and the League of Villains. To be honest, this was the last place and group he wanted to meet, but he had no other choice besides. They owed him for all that he had done for them. We're here, boss, Watanabe said as the limo pulled up to a tall glass building. So this is where they've been hiding, Nashimori thought before scooting himself into his chair. He was then brought into the building, where he and Watanabe were met by an elderly woman sitting behind a desk. I'm here for Mr. Shigaraki, Nashimori said. I'm Shinobu Nashimori of the 8 Precepts of Death. Of course, sir, the woman said in a sickly sweet voice. Just take the elevator up to the top floor, and Mr. Shigaraki will meet you. Candy, she added, holding up a bowl of assorted sweets. Nashimori raised his hand to decline, but Watanabe decided to take one and put it in his coat pocket. Once inside the elevator, Watanabe pressed the last button and they shot straight up. It only took them 30 seconds before they reached the top floor. As the elevator doors opened, the two criminals were met by the rest of the League of Villains. Some were glaring at them, while others were smiling maliciously. Their gaze fell upon a desk near a set of glass windows overlooking the city. The man seated behind the desk had a scar over his lip and there were several scratch marks around his eyes. His red eyes moved to see them and he gave an averso creepy smile. Shinobu Nashimori, he said in a raspy voice, what a pleasure to see you again. Shigaraki, Nashimori said curtly as he was wheeled forward until his feet touched the desk. I see things have improved since your downfall in Tokyo. Indeed, Shigaraki said before turning to see Watanabe unwrap his candy. I wouldn't do that, the candy is poison. He waited to see Watanabe stuff the sweet back into his pocket before turning his attention back to the crime boss. So did you want to see me? I've come to ask a favor of you, Nashimori said, his fingers drumming on the armrests of his wheelchair. As we both know, my associate Kai Chisaki failed to keep my operations going and I lost the key ingredient to making our bullets. In order to make more bullets, we need Eri. Fortunately, I know where she is. She's residing with Izuku Midoriya in one of the dorms at UA. Shigaraki was unamused at the news. Then why don't you go and get her, he asked. I tried, Nashimori said. I even offered Midoriya and that girl Ochako IzuOcha 120 million yen each to give Eri back to me, but those stupid brats refused. He then gestured to Shigaraki. And that's why I've come to you. I need your help to retrieve my granddaughter and keep her with me. This was a silence that filled the office as Nashimori's proposal set in. Some of the lieutenants were looking at each other, wondering who would make the first move. After a few minutes, Shigaraki finally broke the silence. Do you really think I would be stupid enough to endanger my troops just so you can get back one stupid little girl? Nashimori's eyes narrowed. That little girl is the key to making those bullets you want. And besides, he added as he leaned forward, after everything my organization and I have done for you and your league, you owe me this. Shigaraki leaned forward over his desk and glared at the Yakuza boss. Watch what you say, old man, he growled. Your partnership with us is only because my master wanted your services. Without us, you'd be just like the rest of your pathetic gangs. Nashimori matched his glare. Listen to me well, boy, he snarled. While you were nursing off your mother, I was making a name for myself in Tokyo. The only reason I even show respect to this little group of yours is because I respected your boss. All for one in class, dignity, and showed appreciation and respect. As for you, he paused and sneered. You're just some angsty kid who wanted to play supervillain. The sound of movement caused him to glance around to see the lieutenants moving towards him, some brandishing their weapons. Shigaraki raised his hand, causing them to stop. A tense silence filled the air as the Yakuza boss and All for One's disciple faced off. For a few minutes, nobody moved or made a sound until... You're right, Shigaraki said, lying back into his chair. We do owe you for all that you and your organization have done. We'll help you with kidnapping the kid, as long as you make the bullets. Now, what will you need? Nashimori smiled smugly, feeling as if he had gotten the best of this boy. Good, I'm glad you came to reason. Now, I'll need 150 troops in case some heroes decide to interfere. And I'll need 2 of your lieutenants to make sure they stay in line. Of course, Shigaraki said. And since you've been patient with us, I'll be sure to have 200 additional troops on standby should anything go south. Now if there's nothing else, I believe that we're done here. Indeed, Nashimori said as Watanabe wheeled his chair back. Thank you for your time, Shigaraki. I'll expect the troops within a few days. As soon as the 2 gang members were gone, Shigaraki's face twisted into a hideous smile. That pathetic old fool. He thinks he can tell me what to do and get away with it. It is a relief to see that you haven't lost your touch, sir, Mr. Compress said. What do you plan to do? I wouldn't worry, Compress, Shigaraki said with a wave of his hand. We'll give the old man what he wants. Once he realizes what I've done to him, I'll make him see that I quote am the one he should be obeying. Until then, he pointed toward 2 of his lieutenants. You 2, come here. He waited until they were in front of him before continuing. I've decided to make you 2 the leaders of the troops for this operation. You do as Nashimori tells you until I say otherwise. Is that clear? Yep, one of the lieutenants said excitedly. You can count on us, Shigaraki, and the best part is, she added as she took out one of her knives and ran it against her face, I might get to see Midoriya and IzuOcha. There is Sonesty. Whatever, the other lieutenant said. I was getting bored already. And who knows, he said with a smirk as blue flames shot from his hand. This might be fun. Midoriya and IzuOcha both flopped on the couch in exhaustion. The stress of being a second year was starting to get to them. In addition to the gratuitous amount of homework, the training exercises were also becoming more rigorous and more dangerous. Izuku almost got himself injured from falling debris, while IzuOcha got a sprained ankle from running away from a giant stone boulder. Rough day. How the couple turned to see Gyro looking at them with intrigue. You have no idea, IzuOcha said. Aizawa and the other teachers are running us ragged with hero training and schoolwork. You should check out Jamming Ye over here, the earphone jack user said, pointing towards Kaminari, who was curled up on the floor and rocking back and forth. He's been like that ever since we've been assigned extra work. Can't really blame him, Midoriya said. And on top of everything else, we also have to come back and take care of Iri. Sorry, Papa, Iri said worriedly. I didn't mean to make you or Mama sad or upset. It's okay, Iri, Midoriya said as he smiled and rubbed Iri's hair. We're not upset with you or anything. Mama and I are just exhausted. I have an idea, Toru chimed in. Why don't you 2 have a night off? It'll be like a date. A date, IzuOcha asked with a raised eyebrow. But we went on a date a couple months ago. Well, technically, that was a fake date that Iri and I set you up on, Mina said. You should go out on an actual date. You know, just to have fun. IzuOcha contemplated. It would be nice to get a break from all this craziness. What do you think, Deku, she asked, turning to her boyfriend. As sure, he said with a squeak. I would like that. When are you next available? I think I'm free this Friday. Friday it is, then. The days flew by after that, and the 2 lovers soon found themselves changing into civilian clothes on Friday. Midoriya was wearing tan khaki pants, a white t-shirt, and a checkered flannel shirt. In addition, he wore his signature red sneakers. IzuOcha, meanwhile, decided to wear a black t-shirt, denim shorts, and a pink long-sleeve shirt. She also wore blue sneakers. When she came downstairs, Midoriya was once again awestruck by how beautiful IzuOcha was, even if she was wearing casual clothes. You look nice, he said. Why, you as well, IzuOcha said as her cheeks turned bright pink. For a few minutes, they stood in total silence as their classmates smiled at the sight before them. Are you 2 morons going to do this every time you go out on a date? Bakugou yelled in frustration. All right, IzuOcha said before grabbing her purse. Now listen, there's plenty of leftovers in the fridge, so no takeout. Bedtime is at 8 p.m. And if Iri is going to watch a movie, no scary stuff. Ada saluted to indicate that he understood the instructions. One more thing, Midoriya said before shooting a look at both Iri and Mina. We better not find you two stalking us like you did on Valentine's Day. Don't worry you two, Kirishima chimed in casually. If they try anything, we'll handcuff them to the table. I'm kidding, he added quickly as IzuOcha and Midoriya both glared at him. We'll only do that to Mina. Iri will just sit in the timeout corner. Right, IzuOcha said, though she still murderously glared daggers at the redhead. Well, we better get going. Be good, sweetie. I will, Mama, Iri said as IzuOcha and Midoriya both gave her hugs and a peck on each cheek. Have fun with Papa. IzuOcha and Midoriya smiled as they left Alliance Heights. As soon as they left, Mina asked, Soho wants to watch cartoons. I do, Iri exclaimed excitedly. So, IzuOcha said when they were outside, where do we go to first? I did some research last night and found this restaurant close by that serves local and casual cuisine. I heard they serve matcha for dessert, Midoriya said, smiling at the excited look on his girlfriend's face. I take it you want to go there. Yes, IzuOcha said, nodding her head excitedly. She then took Midoriya's hand as they began walking towards their destination. She smiled at him, which he returned. They really had come a long way since they started at UA. A year ago, they were just friends who were determined to become great heroes. Now they were in their second year, continuing with their dreams, dating, and practically raising a kid. Funny how life works like that, they both thought. 20 minutes later, they arrived at the restaurant. The aroma of meats and vegetables flowed through the air, causing Midoriya to sigh peacefully and IzuOcha's mouth to water. They went and were seated at a table, where they were handed their menus. So what should I get? IzuOcha asked. Ew, this judon looks absolutely delicious. What are you going to get, Izuku? She looked at her boyfriend in confusion. He was looking at his phone and twiddling his fingers nervously. Izuku, are you okay? Midoriya asked. Oh right, sorry Ochako. He picked up his menu and looked through it. No less than 10 seconds in, he began tapping his foot. You know, maybe we should call Ida just to see how Iri is doing. Let me just get my Izuku, IzuOcha said firmly. It's okay. Ida and the others can take care of her. Tonight's our night to relax. You're right, Midoriya said, scratching the back of his head sheepishly. I'll just get the katsudon then. 20 minutes later, their meals were brought to them. Midoriya smiled at the sight of his chicken sizzling over the rice, while IzuOcha eyed her steak with glee. Using her chopsticks, IzuOcha picked up a piece of the steak and ate it. Her eyes widened when the juicy meat and the spices hit her taste buds. Wow, this is really good. She picked up another piece. Hey, Deku, you wanna try it? Midoriya asked. It took him a few seconds to remember what she had asked. Sure, IzuOcha. He leaned forward across the table and took a bite from IzuOcha's outstretched chopsticks. Wow, he said after swallowing, that is really good. He picked up a piece of his own meal. Do you want one as well, IzuOcha? Sure, she exclaimed. IzuOcha opened her mouth and bit down on the slice of pork that was between Midoriya's chopsticks. She chewed on it slowly with closed eyes. Wow, that's delicious. They spent the next few minutes enjoying their meals, chatting and laughing with each other. Soon, their bowls were empty and IzuOcha got to enjoy some delicious matcha. Of course, she decided to share some with Midoriya. Boy, IzuOcha said after eating the last one. That really hit the spot. Where to next? I was thinking we could walk around Tokyo for a bit, Midoriya suggested. It'd be a good way to burn off the food we just ate. Great idea, Izuku, IzuOcha said. The two then paid for their meal and left. Ada sighed as he loomed over his Japanese history book. Most of his other classmates were upstairs in their dorm rooms, either studying or relaxing. The class president smiled. It was a good night overall. Despite a few mishaps from Minta and Kaminari, the students behaved themselves as best they could. Iri herself was on her best behavior, accepting what she ate and not complaining when it was time for her to go to bed. As of now, the little girl was asleep in Midoriya's room with the door slightly ajar. Class 1A agreed to rotate, checking up on her to make sure she was okay. The sound of the main door opening caused Ida to look up from his studies. Ah, Asui, he said, glad to see you're back from nightly training. It's your turn to check on Iri, correct? Yep, Tsuyu said, I'll see you in a bit. The rainy season hero then walked up the stairs to the second floor, where she saw the cracked door. She peeked in to see the little girl sleeping peacefully in her bed. She then entered the room and closed the door ever so slightly. All right then, she thought as her skin melted and a toothy grin grew on her face. Let's get this over with. Meanwhile, Ida had resumed his reading when he heard the main door opening again. He looked up and was confused when he saw Tsuyu walk in. Tsuyu, he asked. What are you doing? What do you mean? Tsuyu asked in equal confusion. I just finished my night training and I was going to check on Iri, but I just saw you go upstairs, Ada said, pointing up the stairs. How were you able to be? The sound of Hagakir's scream caused Tsuyu and Ida to dash up to the second floor. They arrived on the landing to find her on the floor in front of Midoriya's room, her body shaking. Ida raced over and his face paled at what he saw inside his friend's room. Oh no. Meanwhile, Midoriya and IzuOcha were enjoying a walk through downtown Tokyo. The air was cool and the temperature dropped a little, so Midoriya had DD his coat over IzuOcha's shoulders. It sure is beautiful tonight, isn't it? She asked as she gazed up at the full moon. Very beautiful, indeed, Midoriya agreed, though he was looking at her when he said it. She glanced over and as she met his gaze, time seemed to stand still. Midoriya gulped as he gazed into IzuOcha's beautiful chocolate eyes, while IzuOcha smiled as she looked at Midoriya's adorable freckles. They slowly closed their eyes as they leaned into. Ping! The two moved away as both their phones went off. They turned them on and saw the same message from IzuOcha. Get back to the dorms, now. The couple looked at each other with concern. I hope nothing's wrong, IzuOcha said. We better get back to make sure, Midoriya stated. He then picked IzuOcha up and let one for all course through his veins into his feet. With a boost, he leapt into the air with IzuOcha clinging to his neck tightly. The wind whipped their faces as the lights of the city flashed by. Midoriya swore he saw his girlfriend look at him with worry, but he had to focus as they continued to leap across rooftops. When they landed near Alliance Heights, what they saw caused their eyes to widen. The building was surrounded by not just their classmates and their teachers, but the police as well. Several of them were talking to their classmates, while the teachers were talking amongst themselves. What happened here? IzuOcha, problem child, Aizawa said, walking toward them. Glad you both got my text. There's been an incident. As Aizawa talked, Midoriya glanced around at his classmates. None of them seemed to be hurt, but most of them were pale, as if they were worried about something. It was then that a thought crossed his mind. Mr. Aizawa, he asked, trying to act as calmly as he could. Where's Eri? Aizawa was silent for a minute before he said, Look, what I need you both to do is to calm. Midoriya didn't let him finish. He and IzuOcha bolted past him and everyone else into the dormitory. He could have sworn he heard Ida and Aizawa calling after them, but he drowned them out as he made his way up the stairs. When he and IzuOcha reached his room, both froze in shock at what they saw. The room was in disarray. Midoriya's All Might posters and figurines were damaged beyond repair. The beds were ripped open and the desk was ransacked. Even Uri's Deku doll was torn apart. A rustling caused them to look up to see the sliding glass door was open. It was how the perpetrator got out. I'm sorry, Midoriya, Ida said solemnly. We didn't know she had been kidnapped until it was too late. Ring ring. The sound of Midoriya's phone ringing broke the silence. He picked it up to see that it was an unknown caller. He hit the call button and asked hello. Izuku Midoriya, a male voice said on the other line. It's been a while, hasn't it? Midoriya clenched the phone in shock and anger as he recognized the voice. Shinobu Naoshimori. I'm so glad you still remember me, Naoshimori said with a wry tone. I bet you're wondering why I was calling. You see, the most interesting thing just happened to me today. It would seem that what I've wanted to since November has come back to me. There was a rustling sound as if Naoshimori was moving the phone. Then IzuOcha and Midoriya's heart sank as they heard a scared child sniffling as she asked, Mama Papa. Midoriya asked, his hand shaking with rage. How, Naoshimori, how did you kidnap her? Naoshimori only laughed as he said, let's just say I've been in contact with some associates. Hi Deku, a sickeningly familiar voice said, it's been a while. You two should have taken my offer, Naoshimori said. Now I've got what I want and I get to keep my money. Oh, and I came up with a plan in case you two try to come find me. I decided to get my dear granddaughter a charming little neck accessory. All I have to do is press a little button and well, I'll leave the rest to your imaginations. And with that, the Yakuza mob boss hung up. Midoriya brought his phone from his face to his side as he stared blankly. He couldn't believe it after everything they went through to rescue Eri. She had been kidnapped by her own grandfather. The idea that he would endanger his own granddaughter, coupled with IzuOcha's sobs, caused Midoriya to grit his teeth and crush his cell phone with his bare hands. Grrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrrr